1 minute ago, the Prime Minister's words could shake entire governments, but one reckless remark has now thrown the entire future of Labour into doubt. When Keir Starmer dismissed King Charles as nothing more than an outdated relic in fancy attire, he crossed a line no British leader in modern memory had ever dared to approach. What began as quiet whispers behind closed doors has erupted into the most explosive scandal of his career, and the fallout is spreading faster than he or his party can contain. The insult hasn't just angered monarchists, it has fractured Labour from within, with once loyal supporters now turning away in disgust. Britain has entered uncharted territory, where a single outburst threatens to topple a government, empower rivals, and permanently reshape the nation's political landscape. It started with a private meeting that was never meant to be seen by the public. Within the walls of Windsor Castle, King Charles held a confidential discussion with Nigel Farage and senior Reform UK figures. No cameras, no formalities, just quiet talks about Britain's current state and warnings of a government drifting away from its people. At first, it seemed like harmless speculation until details of that meeting leaked, igniting Westminster like wildfire. For Starmer, the revelation was more than just political embarrassment. It was a direct challenge to his authority. Palace insiders hinted that Charles, though careful in tone, had voiced concerns about Britain's direction under Starmer's leadership. For a prime minister already accused of weakness and indecision, the notion of the monarchy engaging with his biggest rival was a humiliation too bitter to bear. But Starmer's outrage went far beyond politics. During an emergency cabinet meeting, his frustration boiled over into what many now call the point of no return. Pacing the room and slamming documents, he lashed out at the king with words that left even his closest allies stunned. The monarchy is nothing but old men in fancy costumes pretending to matter. In those few sentences, he tore through centuries of tradition and shattered the fragile balance between the crown and parliament. Ministers sat frozen, fully aware of the weight of what had just been said. For some, it was disbelief, for others, pure horror. No prime minister in modern British history had ever spoken of the crown with such disdain. And it was only a matter of time before those words escaped Downing Street. The leak came quickly. Within hours, whispers of his outburst reached the press, and by nightfall, it was splashed across front pages nationwide. Major outlets branded Starmer not as a leader, but as a reckless figure attacking the very institution at the heart of British identity. Hashtags condemning him flooded social media. Memes portrayed him as a Republican crusader tearing down the Union Jack. Even Labour loyalists struggled to defend him as lifelong supporters voiced despair and betrayal. A viral clip of a retired schoolteacher from Liverpool perfectly captured the mood of the nation. "I've voted Labour all my life. But insulting our king? That's not leadership. That's destruction." The footage spread like wildfire, becoming a rallying point for the anger sweeping across Britain. Within 24 hours of the scandal breaking, the damage was undeniable. Labour's once dominant support collapsed to alarming lows. A new YouGov poll revealed nearly 3/4 of the public believed Starmer had crossed the line, while over half of Labour's own voters now doubted his ability to lead. In key Labour heartlands, the decline was even more brutal. Entire communities were turning away from a party they'd trusted for generations. What should have been a controllable storm had exploded into an existential disaster. And while Starmer fumed behind closed doors, King Charles chose silence, a silence that only magnified the Prime Minister's humiliation. By refusing to engage, the monarch came across as calm, dignified, and above the chaos, while Starmer appeared rash and unraveling. Political commentators instantly seized on the contrast. One man seemed like a statesman, the other, a leader losing control. Inside Labour's headquarters, panic spread like wildfire. MPs formed secret chat groups to debate their next moves, some urging unity, others quietly pushing for resignation. Each hour deepened the divide. Whispers of a coup grew louder. Meanwhile, Nigel Farage wasted no opportunity. Standing outside Reform UK's headquarters, wrapped in Union Jacks, he delivered a blistering speech. "Others insult our king, we honor him. Others mock our history, we defend it." His words electrified supporters and drew in disillusioned voters from both Labour and the Tories. Within days, Reform UK's membership had quadrupled. Donations surged. For the first time, Farage looked less like a fringe agitator and more like a national force, rising from the wreckage of Labour's implosion. The chaos had outgrown party lines. It was now a national reckoning. Even international leaders began to weigh in, from Canada to Australia, expressing unease. American networks joined in, framing it as proof of Britain's deepening political crisis. The world was watching a prime minister fall apart in real time. And the question echoing across every newsroom and living room was the same. Could Starmer survive the firestorm he had started, or was this the beginning of the end of his leadership? Inside Labour, confidence had shattered beyond repair. Some clung to the hope the uproar would fade, that perhaps Starmer's words could be spun as mere frustration or taken out of context. But reality was far crueler. With every passing hour came new leaks, fresh recordings, and eyewitness confirmations, each one tightening the noose around a leader who had already gone too far. From cabinet insiders who witnessed the Prime Minister's eruption, the picture was grim. Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson confided to close aides that she had never seen a leader so careless with the very traditions that bind the nation together. Her words leaked swiftly, and soon every major outlet was portraying Starmer not as a reformer, but as a wrecking force. The story had escaped his grip, and the public narrative hardened overnight. Keir Starmer, the man who ridiculed the monarchy, was unfit to lead. Within days, the pressure inside Labour intensified. Senior veterans like Harriet Harman and Hilary Benn urged calm, but their appeals were drowned out as younger MPs began openly questioning whether they could campaign for a man who had insulted the institution most Britons held dear. Diane Abbott, one of Labour's most outspoken figures, issued her harshest warning yet. Starmer hasn't just plunged us into scandal, he's exposed us to total political destruction. For many Labour MPs, the thought of facing their voters, forced to justify their leader's outburst against the king, was unbearable. Constituency offices were flooded with calls and emails from lifelong Labour supporters demanding answers. The damage had already cut deep into the party's grassroots. Meanwhile, the Conservatives sensed blood. Once divided and riddled with internal feuds, they now stood united under a single banner. Tory leader Sir Keir Starmer wasted no time delivering relentless blows, framing Starmer's remarks not as a blunder, but as a betrayal of Britain's constitutional soul. His speeches were tight, piercing, and devastatingly effective. When you mock the crown, you mock the people. And no prime minister who mocks the people can ever lead them. The line resonated nationwide. Suddenly, the Conservatives weren't just recovering, they were surging. Party strategists boasted to the press that Labour had handed them the next election on a silver platter. But the most shocking twist came from the meteoric rise of Nigel Farage. Reform UK, long dismissed as a fringe movement, was now everywhere. Farage's fiery defiance and uncanny instinct for public sentiment turned him into the self-styled guardian of British tradition. While Labour imploded, his speech outside Reform UK headquarters exploded online, viewed millions of times and transforming him into the face of resistance against Starmer's perceived arrogance. Donations flooded in. Local branches sprang up overnight. Reform UK's poll numbers rocketed into the mid-20s, within striking range of Labour itself. For the first time in modern British politics, the nation faced the real prospect of a three-way showdown. And through it all, King Charles's silence proved the most powerful statement of all. By refusing to wade into the chaos, the monarch radiated calm, steadiness, and quiet strength, a stark contrast to the disorder consuming Downing Street. Analysts noted that while Starmer appeared desperate, furious, and unsteady, the king's calm demeanor only strengthened his moral authority. Behind palace doors, insiders quietly admitted that Charles was deeply hurt by the Prime Minister's remarks, yet his refusal to respond made him seem untouchable. One Oxford historian remarked, "Charles is playing the long game by saying nothing. He's turning the nation's gaze not toward himself, but toward Starmer. And each time the Prime Minister opens his mouth, he sinks even deeper." Inside Labour's headquarters, the crisis was mutating into open rebellion. Rachel Reeves, once Starmer's closest confidant, had fallen silent, fueling talk that she was preparing a leadership run. Angela Rayner, more outspoken, began rallying MPs, suggesting Labour needed a steady hand to guide us out of chaos. The prospect of a leadership challenge was no longer whispered behind closed doors. It was being discussed openly on national television, cementing the idea that Starmer's days were numbered. Even the notion of Ed Miliband returning as a temporary caretaker leader was now circulating among Labour ranks, a shocking measure of how dire the situation had become. The polling data told the story with cruel precision. Labour's numbers had plummeted from 42% to just 26% in a single week, while the Conservatives climbed to 32% and Reform UK surged to 24%. The once unthinkable idea of Farage overtaking Labour as the official opposition now seemed possible within months. Britain's political landscape was being redrawn in real time, and Starmer was powerless to stop it. Voters who had stood by Labour through years of disappointment were abandoning the party en masse, convinced their leader had lost touch with the very values they cherished. International reaction only deepened the humiliation. Canada's Prime Minister issued a thinly veiled rebuke, reaffirming the importance of constitutional monarchy in democratic systems. Australia's opposition leader went further, branding Starmer's words a disgrace to Britain's global image. Even major U.S. news outlets, rarely focused on British politics, aired primetime segments mocking Starmer's tirade, portraying him as a man unraveling before the world. The scandal had gone global. The Prime Minister had become a living example of arrogance gone wrong, a warning to every leader who confuses power with immunity. Through it all, Starmer clung stubbornly to office, insisting in interviews that his comments had been taken out of context and that he remained committed to guiding Britain forward. But the damage was irreversible. Each attempt to justify himself only magnified the sense of weakness and panic. Every television appearance was dissected, ridiculed, and replayed beside his original insult. The public no longer trusted him. His party no longer believed in him, and his rivals could smell blood in the water. What began as a careless moment of anger had now exploded into a total collapse of authority, leaving Labour staring into the abyss.